What is up, Hardcore Nation? It's Hardcore Christopher here, and let's get right in to Flash Duel, Chapter 2. Jack gaped up at the red-eyes black dragon directly in front of him. Awed and horror-struck, Jack was completely unable to believe his eyes. He'd placed the card on the duel disc, and instead of a holographic image, a real flesh and blood duel monster had appeared in front of him. It has stretched up and broken though the roof. Jack was only partially upright, propped on his elbows after Red-Eye's tail had knocked him down. Jack could see every single scale on its body. He could see the razor edge of his claws and feel the heat from its breath. This can't be real. This can't be real. I'm losing my mind. I have to be going crazy, Jack told himself. Red-Eyes was staring down at Jack as well. His gaze was frighteningly harsh. He seemed to be studying Jack, trying to understand him. It was similar to when Jack had summoned Decoy Dragon, but unlike Decoy Dragon, Red-Eyes was a much more fierce creature. After only a few moments, he growled a menacing growl. Yet again, Red-Eyes bared his fangs at Jack. His teeth were just as black as his scaly armor. He opened his mouth wide. The reddish light of his Inferno Fire Blast attack appeared in his mouth. It grew brighter and brighter as it charged. This can't be happening. This can't be happening, Jack screamed in his mind. The blast from the Red-Eyes attack formed into a huge fireball on the cusp of his mouth. The light from the coming attack reached nearly blinding proportions. Red-Eyes was about to shoot it. Ah! Jack screamed. An idea suddenly flashed through Jack's mind. He looked down at the duel disc on his arm and saw the Red-Eyes card upon it. At the same time, that's the reason why it wasn't making any sense. I was using after. At the same time as Red-Eyes fired his attack, Jack pulled the card off of the disc. Both Red-Eyes and his attack instantly vanished as if they'd never been there. Jack fell back, sprawling on the floor. What felt like gallons of adrenaline started to slowly work its way out of his system. Jack just laid there for the longest time, trying to catch his breath. He could see the blue sky through the massive hole in the roof. I've lost my mind. I've gone crazy. I have to I have to have gone insane, Jack thought. A knock at at the front door brought Jack out of himself, pulling himself to his feet. Jack felt like his body was made of lead. He slowly shuffled over to the door and opened it as far as the chain permitted. Eddie Thorne was on the other side. "Hey Jack, I'm Eddie Thorne. We met the other day at Jitters. I just wanted to check up on you, make sure you're okay after that whole thing that happened." Jack thought about it for a second, then closed the door. Undid the chain and let Eddie inside. How exactly did you find out where I live?" Jack asked. "Well, I don't know if you picked up on this at Jitters, but I'm a detective with the CCPD, so I just ran your name through the database to get your current address." Eddie started to look around Jack's condo the way people do in someone else's home for the first time. "So this is a nice place you have." Eddie stopped dead as his eyes found the hole in the ceiling and roof. "What happened here?" There was a ton of concern in Eddie's voice. "With what?" Jack asked back. "The ceiling." Jack also looked up at the hole. "Wait, you mean you see it too?" Jack asked with surprise and relief. "Of course I see it. It's a massive hole in your roof." "How did that happen?" Eddie said. Jack paused a beat before answering. "Well, I think they must have made some kind of mistake when they built this building. I've been hearing a weird crackling from the ceiling for weeks, and a few minutes ago it just collapsed like that." Eddie looked back at the hole and the living room in general as he considered Jack's explanation. Jack had lied through his teeth, but he thought there was enough mortar and concrete rubble on the floor to legitimize his story. Eddie looked back at Jack. You ought to get in touch with the building owner immediately. There's no way you should have to pay to get that fixed or put it on your insurance." "Yeah, I'll be sure to do that." "All right. Thanks for coming by, Eddie," Jack said, and began to usher the policeman out of his condo. "Wait, I wanted to ask you about what happened at Jitters," Eddie said halfway out the door. All in the past. Low blood sugar, you know how that can be Appreciate the concern. I'll see you around, man. Jack closed the door in Eddie's face and locked it for good measure. He then moved over to the middle of his living room and looked up through the hole again. He thought to himself, "Okay, Jack, good side. Turns out you're not going crazy, 'cause he could see the hole too. Really weird side, if you're not going crazy, that means you somehow summoned an actual living red eyes black dragon." A string of images then passed through his mind, images of golden light, glowing cards, and a ring emerging out of his TV. Jack glanced down at the ring on his finger. He stared at it as if he were seeing it for the very first time. That particle accelerator, Jack thought, the energy stuff that passed through me and everything else, it somehow must have created this ring, and the ring must somehow be in real Millennium item, a Millennium ring. It made it so the cards I played brought out a real decoy dragon and red eyes. An idea passed through Jack's mind, and he looked up at the hole in the ceiling again, pondering it, acting on the idea. He went through his binders of cards until he found the one he wanted, removing it and looking at it closely. Jack then held the card over his head towards the ceiling. "I use blue medicine to fix the ceiling," he proclaimed. Nothing happened. "I use blue medicine to fix the ceiling," he repeated. Again, nothing happened. Jack held the card closely to his face, looking at it and pondering. Blue medicine was a spell card which, in any normal match, was used to increase its holder's life points by 400. If there was any spell card which could fix the hole, he thought it would be one like this. I don't get it. When I put my monster cards on the duel disc, they came to life. The connection formed in his mind, and Jack looked down at his duel disc. He lifted to plain position and inserted the spell card into one of the spell trap zones. There we go. I used the effect of blue medicine on the ceiling, Jack said out loud. In one of the most amazing sights he'd seen yet, Jack watched as all of the rubble moved up, and combined to reform the ceiling and roof without a single seam or crack present afterwards. Gorham, it worked, Jack thought. He looked at his dual disk again. That's how it works. I have to play the card on the disc as if I'm in a duel. I can make the monsters, spells, and presumably the traps all real. The wildest and most joy-filled smile he'd ever worn spread across Jack's face. This is gonna be awesome. An hour later, 20 city blocks to the west, a somewhat unimportant alarm went off in the computer system. Cisco Ramon was manning the computers at that moment and picked up on it immediately. Typing a string of commands on the keyboard, Cisco brought up a map of Central City on his screen via satellite imagery and zoomed in on a specific point. A window in a corner of the screen popped open, reading unknown energy type detected. What the? Cisco muttered to himself. He entered another command, trying to bring up an analysis report on the detected energy. The box saying unknown energy type detected simply shrank and then re-expanded, in effect bouncing to reinforce that it was the extent of the computer's available information. Cisco frowned at that. He transferred the data onto a tablet and got up from the computer desk with it. Walking from the primary computer lab, Cisco took the tablet a moderately long way until he reached his destination. He knocked on the door to an office and waited for the response. "Come in," a voice said from the other side. Cisco opened the door and found Dr. Harrison Wells behind his desk. Dr. Wells, our satellites have picked up something odd," Cisco said. "Really?" Wells pushed himself and his wheelchair around the desk closer to Cisco. Cisco held the tablet out so that they could both look at it. "Our satellites detected some kind of unique energy signature coming from within the city, and I tried to get an analysis report on it, but the computer can't identify what kind of energy it is," Cisco said. Wells took the tablet in his hands and began to use the command functions on it. "Do you think it could be another person like our patient Barry?" Cisco asked. "I don't think so," Wells asked. "There's no T." "Well." He tilted the screen so Cisco could see it again. I think what we found is a glitch in our satellite system. Looks like fragmented data created a false sensor reading that the computer identified as an energy pattern, and that's why it couldn't say what kind of energy it is. Cisco took the tablet back, staring at the screen. Huh, you're right. I'll get started on finding and eliminating the data. Cisco then left the office. Wales watched him as he left, tracking his movement. I think I'll look into this, he thought. He then stood up out of the wheelchair, shifting everything from his thought process to his body language, from the goose of Harrison Wells back to his true self of Eobard Thwain. Thwain then used his super speed to phase through the walls and race out of the building towards the location of the energy surge. Meanwhile, several miles outside of the city, Jack was standing in the shadow of a building in an abandoned industrial park. He'd come there with his dual disk to test out his newfound powers. For the purpose of experimentation, Jack had put together a deck with many varying types of spells, traps, and monsters. The deck would never be any good in an actual duel, but would do to see how the cards worked with the abilities. Jack activated the dual disk and drew his first card. It was a spell card, Illusion Magic. If the blue medicine card could work to repair my roof, then that must mean that my Millennium Ring doesn't make the card do what it says exactly to the letter, but more of a type of real world equivalent. Jack thought, abundantly curious to what it would do. Jack played Illusion Magic. I activate the spell card Illusion Magic. A high dome wall of shimmering and translucent light formed a wide circumference is spelt wrong, around Jack and a portion of the building, even though he couldn't tell from his position. Jack had the sense that the wall of light was hiding him, keeping him and any of the monsters he may summon invisible and undetectable. He decided to leave that card in play. This is so cool. He drew his second card. I summon Monster Egg. Jack half shouted. The light of summoning flashed, and a huge, dark, brown egg with a jaggedly circular hole and two eyes peeking out appeared in front of Jack. Jack was about to approach it when a shard of eggshell suddenly flung towards him. He dodged the fragment easily, but then another one flew at him as well. It slashed across Jack's face, cutting semi-deeply through his cheek. A bombardment of sharpened eggshells were volleyed at him. Jack turned away and doubled over to protect his head and pulled the card off of the disc. Monster Egg disappeared. Jack stood up straight, lifting his hand to his face. He touched the cut and winced slightly from the stinging pain. His hand came away with a bit of blood covering 3 fingers. He decided it wasn't bad enough that he should stop and tend to it. Well, I won't be summoning that one again, he thought. He then drew another card from the deck, the monster Strike Ninja. Jack played the card and the Strike Ninja appeared. Strike Ninja's back was to Jack, and he immediately started glancing around at the unfamiliar surroundings. Koko, wa do ko? The ninja asked himself. He was speaking Japanese. Strike Ninja then turned around and saw Jack. Yeah. And Theodore? Jack had no idea in the least what the man was saying to him. Strike Ninja went on. Koko ni siwati kite junasana ke. I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're saying. I'm Jack. Jack stepped forwards with his right arm extended to shake hands. The Strike Ninja jerked into a defensive, on-guard stance and pulled a kunai out of an unseen weapon holster from behind his back. Jack stopped immediately. Sugu ni Yamati Watasharai wa Antaya o Kizakut Kaiketsu wa Amazon Naigi ga Akati Aru no Ke o Shi Shiritai to Amantesu Imisu, Strike Ninja yelled. Jack quickly removed his hand, terminating the interaction. Okay, note to self, don't summon him again unless you learn Japanese. He then drew his first trap card of the session. I activate Wall of Thorns. Instantly, a protective wall of thorns covered vines. A protective wall of thorn covered vines shot of the ground in front of him, 15 feet tall and 30 feet wide. Jack stepped closer and felt one of the vines. It was wholly tangible and real, the thorns sharp and the vine soft like any plant, and yet also somehow as hard as steel. Jack already knew full well it was all genuine by that point, but he was still in awe of it all. The rest of the day proceeded like that. Jack tested over 30 cards in the deck. Over the following 2 hours, the spells and traps had almost no difficulty to them. They were nothing but mindless manifestations of magic. The monster cards were an entirely different story, as Jack had observed in the case of Decoy Dragon, Red Eyes, and the others. He had no arbitrary control over the actions of the monsters he summoned, like he would in a duel. Instead, it seemed that the magic of the Millennium Ring was summoning the dual monster spirit, which corresponded to the card played, and brought them to life with their own minds, personalities, and control intact. When he summoned the V-Tiger Jet machine monster, it had soared high, dive-bombed at Jack, and attempted to blow him up with a barrage of missiles before Jack pulled the card. When he summoned the Shining Friendship, a favorite of Taya Gardner, the small green fairy monster had floated over to Jack and cuddled itself against his face. Its fuzzy body felt soft and delicate, and it exuded a feeling of caring and affection. He summoned elemental hero Neos, and after Jack had explained who he was and what was happening, the two of them ended up talking for over 30 minutes. discussing the merits and detractors of fusion monsters, what it felt like for Neos to fuse with another monster, battle tactics, deceptive strategies, and a few other topics. At the end of it, Jack removed Neos card with consent from the hero, and a feeling of camaraderie which Jack enjoyed thoroughly. Things changed again when he played his next card, the beast monster known as Finner, a giant gray wolf. So it's like Silverfang? I'm gonna guess that some of the cards he made up for the story. A giant gray wolf, easily twice the size of any normal one, appeared as soon as it saw Jack. It growled a frightening, aggressive snarl. Fur spiked upward along its back. Furner arched its back, sunk down, spring-loading its back legs, and launched itself into a fast-traveling lunge at Jack, its fangs bared and ready to bite and kill him. It hit him, knocking Jack down onto the ground and making his head collide into the concrete. Jack just managed to reflexively put his right hand behind his head to cushion the impact. Furner rose up, readying itself to strike, shot its head downward, and locked its teeth against Jack's throat. Jack pulled Furner's card a split second before the animal succeeded in ripping his throat out. Jack sat up, gagging and gasping for breath. He felt his neck. There were indentions in his skin. We've got a little ways to go. From the monster's teeth. Nature call. Seeming to just be on the verge of becoming punctuals, Jack knew he had discarded Furner at the last possible moment. Okay, I've got it. I've got to choose my monsters a lot more carefully. If I think about it, there are a lot who will probably act like that one, he thought, dragging himself to his feet, Jack drew his next card to press on. It was the Summoned Skull. He was about to play the card simply out of a nearly automatic sequence of testing his powers when his mind flashed an image through his... Well, wait. When his mind flashed an image through his mind of the rat, of the giant skelecular, well, no, skeletal. There we are, skeletal. Monster attacking him with its lightning strike. Jack gulped and shuddered from the thought. Yeah, I'm gonna stay away from the fiend type monsters. Let's see. Jack deposited Summoned Skull directly into the graveyard and drew his next one. The card he picked was Dark Magician Girl. Dark Magician Girl, well, between how she was on the shows and the fact that she's basically human, she'll probably be friendly enough he played the card. I summon Dark Magician Girl. Okay. The customary flash of light occurred, and the girl from the image was brought to life before him. Huh? What? She asked no one in particular before seeing Jack. Could you tell me what's going on here? Jack was taken aback by her voice. He had recognized it. No surprise, because of all the you have watched, kind sir. Her voice was the same female voice as he had heard amongst all the duelage of the sounds of the duel monsters. Hers was the voice which had allowed him to tune the rest of it out and pushed it away. The voice which had saved him. He stepped closer to her, holding out his hand to shake. Hi. I said that already. He chuckled weakly. It's nice to meet you. My name's Jack. Dark Magician Girl gripped his hand with hers and shook. Her skin was fair colored, soft, supple, and felt utterly flawless. Um, the contact sent shivers running through Jack's body. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you too. Could you please explain where I am? Jack held onto her hand for a moment longer than he should have before releasing it and beginning to tell the story. Well, obviously, this isn't the Duel Monster spirit world. I can't really explain how it happened, but some kind of scientific accident made it so that I received this ring. He held up his right hand so she could see the golden ring. A Millennium item? But it can't be. The Millennium ring is a completely different type of item, and it belongs to someone else, Dark Magician Girl said. Like I said, I don't really know how it happened, but it did. This Millennium ring seems to give me the power to make dual monster cards real. How else could you be here? Could you be here now? I don't know. Before going on without knowing what he was doing, Jack took a good look at the girl in front of him. She was of average female height, around 5'5", golden blonde hair flowed from her head in bangs around and between her eyes, and cascaded in long waves down past her shoulders. Her eyes were the most beautiful emerald, there we are, green color he had ever seen, and conveyed a playful, fun-loving spirit. She had long legs and medium-sized breasts. Why go into that much detail? Beneath her light blue and pink accented outfit, Jack knew that in that moment that she was the most beautiful girl he'd ever seen. As beautiful as she was, even though he couldn't put his finger on what it was, Jack thought there was something a little off about how she looked. Is there something wrong? You're staring, she said to Jack. Her words shook Jack back to himself. I'm sorry. I really didn't mean to stare. It's just you don't quite look like how you do on the card somehow. She smiled. She smiled dimly at him. Oh, I understand now. That picture on the card makes me look just like a child, doesn't it? I've always hated that. Jack knew then that that was it. In the flesh, she looked older than she did in the card's picture. She looked to be physically somewhere around 21, same as he himself was. "So what's this all about?" she asked. "Oh right. I'm sorry for getting off topic," Jack answered, sorry, looking slightly down and away from her. "It's not a problem. I'd just like to know," she said in intimately sweet and understanding voice. Jack made eye contact with her again and smiled. "Okay, see, it's just that I'm testing out exactly what I can do with these new powers. Seems I'm able to summon monsters from your world and bring you here in flesh and blood. Since you have your own mind and willpower, I obviously, why am I having such a hard time with words? Can't control you, and I wouldn't try to. So what exactly are you planning to do with this ability?" Jack responded, "I'm not really sure what I'm gonna do with them. I do know you don't have to worry about me. I've got no interest in doing anything evil. For right now, I just want to meet and maybe make friends with some of my favorite monsters, like you." Dark Magician Girl beamed a wide and beautiful smile at him. "Well, you've definitely made a friend in me. I'm very glad to know you, Jack. I'm happy to know you too, Dark Magician Girl." He smiled and a genuine, exceedingly happy smile. "Before I go, or you unsummon me, or however it works, let me take care of that for you," she said just as he was about to take her card off the disc. "Take care of what?" Jack asked. Instead of answering verbally, Dark Magician Girl reached out, put her hand over the cut on his cheek, and closed her eyes. A pink aura glowed out from her hand, and Jack's entire body trembled as a blissful, elating warmth which made him feel like he'd ascended to some kind of heavenly plane of existence, saturated his being. He gratefully wallowed in the feeling until it ceased. When she removed her hand from his face, she had used her magic to heal the cut on his face and the slight damage to his throat, rather than a feeling of withdrawal or a desire to have the the sublime sensation her magic had given him back. Jack felt a profound thankfulness to have experienced it. Wow, he gasped quietly. It was a, a long several moments before his eyes regained focus and found hers. He reached out with his own hand and touched his face, confirming that his small injury was indeed no longer existent. Wow, he said again, smiling at Dark Magician Girl. Thank you. Don't think don't think anything of it. I'm glad to be able to help a friend. Well, I'm gonna pull your card now, so you know I'll be seeing you around. Okay, feel free to summon me if you ever need help, she said. Jack nodded and took her card off of the monster zone, lifting it close to his face and looking at it. The Dark Magician Girl, he thought affectionately. Oh, Obard Thwain had been waiting for over 3 hours at the exact coordinates of the energy surge, but hadn't seen a thing. After so much time, Thwain had no choice but to conclude some sort of mistake either in the computer or the information itself had actually been a mistake. Although the Star Lab's computers were quite advanced, and the young Cisco Ramon was truly a genius with the machines, Thwain knew simple mistakes were still possible. Thwain supersped away from the abandoned industrial park. If he had waited just 5 minutes more, he would have seen the illusion magic card being deactivated and Jack starting on his way home. Back in the condo, Jack was eating a dinner of a homemade chicken burrito while watching more Yu-Gi-Oh! He was well into the second season of the show, watching as Yugi and a Tim dueled the rare hunter Arcana in the Battle City tournament. As the Pharaoh summoned the Dark Magician Girl to finish Arcana off during the climax of the conflict, it naturally made Jack think of how he'd met her only a couple of hours before. Jack couldn't help himself as he pulled the dual disc closer to himself on the couch, extracted the deck, and went through it until he found the Dark Magician Girl card. For a long time he just sat there looking at the card. He couldn't help but think about the girl from the image he had met. She had been like no other girl Jack had ever met before. She had been nice, kind, sweet, and seemingly failed to notice his social awkwardness. But most of all, she had seemed to be interested in Jack in his entire life. No one had ever really been interested in Jack before. It was that more than anything else, which kept his thoughts revolving around her. Without really knowing what he was doing, Jack activated the duel disk and placed the card on one of the Monster Zone slots. I summoned the Dark Magician Girl. In a flash of light, she was standing in front of him. She saw him and smiled warmly. "Hello, Jack. Do you need help with something?" she asked brightly. Jack suddenly realized he hadn't thought for a second about what to say to her after he summoned her. "Think of something," he yelled at himself in his mind. "Think of something to say. A reason why you summoned her. Say anything other than, 'I just wanted to see you.'" Jack stammered. He then suddenly had a blast of inspiration. It was the perfect way to not only not weird her out, but to create an excuse to spend time with her. "I told you how I'm trying to master my powers. I thought that since you know you're a duel monster and know so much about that world, and since we can easily communicate, I was thinking maybe you could help me make allies with some of the monsters in my deck." On the inside, he breathed a deep sigh of relief for coming up with such a good explanation. With a slight tension, he then waited for Dark Magician Girl's response. "Well, depending on the types of monsters you plan to call upon, it could be tricky, but it also sounds like it could be fun. I'll be glad to help you." The the rap the raptir the rap the rapish the rappies, whatever that word is, charge that passed through Jack upon hearing her words, knowing that she had agreed to spend time with him, filled him with such excitement. He had to fight to not black out from it. He responded, That's great. So we'll start tomorrow. Same place as today." That's fine. That's fine with me. I'm looking forward to it." "Okay, so I'll see you then," Jack said. I think Jack has well, to be fair, Cyrus had a love interest in Dark Magician Girl. Dark Magician Girl beamed a bright smile, and gave a nod of her head before Jack removed her card. That night he went to sleep with more of a sense of optimism for the future than he'd ever felt before. That was long. I think that was longer than chapter 1. But, guys, next Saturday we will read through chapter 3, see what monsters Jack can become friends with, and who he cannot. I am Hardcore Christopher. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And as always, I'm Hardcore Christopher. Keep it hardcore, everyone.